The MCU killed the Hulk. They took one of the most popular Marvel heroes, gave him the biggest push imaginable, then painfully squandered his hype and left him to die on the D-list. I'm going to do a full, top-to-bottom breakdown of the Hulk's role in the MCU to explain what I mean. First on the list is the Incredible Hulk. Not the best start, but not terrible. All around, this one was fairly mediocre. There's a few good action sequences, and it's a relatively faithful adaptation. However, the CGI is not the best, and the writing wasn't particularly compelling. If the creators were able to learn from their mistakes and improve with a proper sequel, this film would probably be remembered much more fondly. But it didn't play out that way. Ed Norton had some creative differences with Marvel and got canned. So that was the end of it. The Incredible Hulk became the black sheep of the MCU. Most of the side characters got scrapped, and Bruce Banner would get a soft reboot in The Avengers with Mark Ruffalo. So, let's talk about it. Most of you are probably thinking this is the good one, where they got everything right, but I would disagree. Just to be clear, the Hulk is phenomenal in this movie, and he definitely steals the show. However, there are still issues that started out small, but rippled into larger problems over time. The film does a decent enough job of reintroducing Bruce Banner through the lens of Mark Ruffalo, but falls short when it comes to the Hulk. The Hulk is a separate character from Bruce Banner with his own wants and desires, but we see none of that in this movie. When he first appears, he goes on a rampage through the helicarrier. This is all well and good, but leaves a little something to be desired. More specifically, we never know what the Hulk is thinking. He chases after Black Widow, but why? Who does he think she is, and why does he want to hurt her? Make no mistake, the Hulk is known for going on rampages like this, but there's usually a bit more nuance to it. He's angry and child-minded, yes, but he's also relatively oblivious and innocent. His rampages generally start because he gets provoked by scared or malicious enemies. Or he's confused and lashes out in ignorance because he doesn't really know what's going on. When the Hulk was first created, he was like a child being born for the first time, with his goals usually being as simple as trying to find peace and isolation. He generally doesn't go out of his way to hurt anyone, but he'll smash anybody who interferes with his peace. And since his transformation is triggered by anger, he's usually getting provoked a lot. With the helicarrier rampage, we don't really get that nuance. He comes off as more of a mindless beast, just charging room to room, smashing anyone and anything that gets in his way. Then his next appearance makes things even more confusing. The "I'm always angry" line is one of those turn your brain off and don't think about it lines, because it causes a lot of problems when you break it down. What do you mean when you say you're always angry? And how does that allow you to control the Hulk? Are you even in control? If you're always angry, why aren't you always the Hulk? Of course, we never get any answers for these kinds of questions. This line was mainly thrown in so the writers could fast forward the Hulk's development from being a mindless beast to a team player. But that's such a shame, because that development is extremely important for the Hulk's story, and would be fascinating to watch unfold on screen. He's one of the most complicated characters in Marvel, so much so that he almost fights his teammates as much as his enemies. I'm sure all of us would have loved to see the Avengers find a way to work with the Hulk and develop a steady relationship over time, instead of skipping over that for the sake of getting hero shots. You can still have the Hulk and the Avengers team up at the end, but just explain it a bit more and make it less convenient. Give us a deeper dive into what the Hulk is thinking. What is his opinion of the Avengers? Why does he want to help? Answering these small questions can go a long way for setups and payoffs. Here's an example of what that might look like. Say maybe the Hulk lashed out too quickly on the helicarrier, and any harm he caused Black Widow was accidental, though I would personally bring in Betty Ross to fill this role. In either case, Hulk could feel guilty for his earlier actions and would want to redeem himself by helping the Avengers fight Loki. And since the Hulk is so powerful, the Avengers would tentatively but gladly accept his help. Then further drama could ensue due to the Hulk fighting too recklessly or not stopping when the fight is over. Then he would get into further conflict with his team until someone he sees as innocent, like Betty, could intervene and help him see the error of his ways. The end result would be a tensely thin ice relationship with his team, and that's the best place to keep the Hulk from a meta perspective. He is the nuke of the team. He is by far the strongest Avenger, but he comes at a great cost of risking self-destruction and infighting. The MCU tries to manufacture this drama, but they ultimately fail to leave a significant impact, because they never do any setup. It's a moot point to show the Hulk leave the team and be upset with them when we never know what he thought of them in the first place. His development throughout the MCU is just a vapid downward spiral, which brings us to Age of Ultron. And right out the gate, the Hulk is being misused. He's helping the Avengers take out a Hydra base, which is causing somewhat of a paradox. This mission seems relatively easy, so the Avengers shouldn't need to risk bringing the Hulk in.
Can we hold them? The Avengers.
But is the Hulk even a risk anymore? He seems to understand the situation well enough, and he's a pretty good team player, but they also show that Black Widow is needed to calm the Hulk down. But why? Is he or is he not in control of himself? He's able to fight alongside the team, but when Widow tries to give him a lullaby, he seems angry with her, and she seems afraid of him. So again I ask, what is going on in the Hulk's head? What does he think of Black Widow? Why is she able to calm him down? Last time they interacted, he was trying to smash her face in, so what changed? Again, these are questions with no answers. It's not even really clear if they want the Hulk to be an independent character, or if it's just Banner who's in control. The "I'm always angry" line seems to suggest that Banner is controlling the Hulk, but then they also have lines like,
"You're Bruce Banner." Right, don't mention puny Banner.
That suggest that Hulk and Banner are separate entities. Lines like these conflict with one another, and only further muddy the Hulk's development. Also, if they always bring the Hulk out, even for smaller missions like this one, then it takes away from the Hulk's mystique and appeal. It should be a major event whenever the Hulk appears, and his presence should make a big difference in any given encounter. The first film nailed this perfectly, but now his presence is being treated so casually that he just doesn't feel as important as he used to. They have the Code Green as contingency, but it's not really treated with much importance. Like, why is this opening skirmish a Code Green, and why do Code Greens matter if Widow can just nonchalantly give him a lullaby? It's a textbook definition of having your cake and eating it too. If you want the Hulk to be a risk, with his own contingency code, then show the risks. They almost get it right when Scarlet Witch mind controls the Hulk into rampaging throughout the city, but this scene causes far more harm than good. In fact, this is probably the singularly most damaging scene for the Hulk as a character, because he loses cleanly in a 1v1 fight with Iron Man, and as a result of that fight, he loses his relevance. If you have the Hulk lose to Iron Man in a fair fight, then that means Iron Man is better than Hulk. The Hulk's role in the team is to be the trump card they pull when they don't have enough strength to win on their own. If Iron Man can just beat the Hulk by himself, then why even have him there? You might as well just cut him from the team and avoid the risk since you don't need his power. In the comics, Hulk's tagline is that he's the strongest one there is. And there is a real purpose behind that. As I mentioned before, he should be the most powerful Avenger, with the trade-off being that he's the most dangerous. If he's not the most powerful, then he's just dangerous. "We have a Hulk" is a much less meaningful line if Iron Man, the one who said the line, is even better than the Hulk. There's a lot that could be done to improve this scene. One way would be to put the Hulk at a disadvantage, either by having him fight multiple Avengers, or by explaining that Wanda's mind control has him in a weakened state. Or better yet, you could bring this scene to its natural conclusion. The Hulk looks out and sees all these innocent people panicking and in despair as a result of his actions. The guilt of this could cause him to snap out of his mind-controlled rampage, and allow him to surrender on his own terms, not getting punched out by Iron Man. This is something Civil War did very well. We have heroes fighting against one another, but they wrote it in such a way that all heroes get to walk out of the film being very protected. On the surface, it's pretty clear that Iron Man is more powerful than Captain America, but Cap has Bucky at his side. And while Cap and Bucky are double-teaming Iron Man, they're able to cripple him so that when Bucky gets removed from the fight, Captain America still stands more of a chance by himself. This allows both heroes to look good, so that even when Captain America wins, Iron Man fans can still have the satisfaction of saying that it wasn't a fair fight. Man, Russos, you guys did a good job here. What happened to you? Never mind, we'll get to that later. Something else worth noting is that Hulk struggles way more than he should here. Iron Man should be the clear underdog in this fight, even with the Hulkbuster suit. If he's cracking jokes and playing this like he's mildly annoyed, then the Hulk just comes off as a mild joke of a threat. This should be the fight of Iron Man's life. He should be desperate to survive, and he should barely get out alive. The Hulk came out of the first film looking like an unstoppable, awe-inspiring monster. But this new scene alone flushed all that hype straight down the toilet. There's also a great opportunity for drama that's left completely barren. Some Avengers should be at odds with Bruce after this, or at least more afraid or controlling of him, wanting to avoid having this happen again in the future. But no, they don't really seem to care. Bruce never suffers any consequences, and the Hulk's mistakes never get brought up again in any meaningful way, aside from a few references when he's flirting with Black Widow. And speaking of that, why? I think most people are in agreement that this is just incorrect. Mark Ruffalo and Scarlett Johansson have very little chemistry. There was no build-up to this, and they both have other partners out there that never get properly explored. What happened to Betty Ross? I get that they want to pretend that the Incredible Hulk doesn't exist, but can't you at least recast her? She's more than just a love interest. She is crucial to the Hulk's story. She is his control. The one thing that Bruce and the Hulk have in common is that they both love Betty, and she is usually the key to calming the Hulk down and bringing him peace. Their romance is also endearing because it's tragic. She is a normal woman, and is in far too much danger to have a real relationship with Bruce, made worse by the fact that her father is his worst enemy. You can't just copy-paste Black Widow into that role and expect it to be fine. Besides, Mark Ruffalo is nearly 20 years older than Scarlett Johansson, and that's a little weird. Maybe not weird to those Hollywood freaks, but it is to us normal people. Oh, but they're a match because they're both monsters, you see. Because she can't have kids, you see. Yeah. I bet you're real proud of that one, aren't you, Joss? Now if we fast forward to the final battle, Bruce enters it by freeing Black Widow from prison. Bruce references that he shouldn't go green because that could endanger both civilians and Widow herself. But again, it's shallow and meaningless because she's like, nah, whatever, and just forces him to transform. And there is no consequence whatsoever. She is in no danger from the Hulk at all. Instead, she just shares silly banter with him with no care in the world. No civilians are in any danger either. The risk of that doesn't even really get brought up again. Like the first film, Hulk is a perfect team player with no rhyme or reason as to why. Still no insight into what he wants or desires. He only exists and acts however the plot needs him to. In the battle itself, Hulk gets some nice moments here and there, but it's nothing close to his former glory in the first film. His presence is barely felt in the battle, and it feels like he's only really there as an afterthought instead of being a crucial member of the team. Age of Ultron suffers from a bloated cast in general, and Hulk takes the brunt of that damage. He is still brutally underdeveloped, and what little screen time he gets is mostly wasted on his forced romance with Black Widow. And the cherry on the top of this clusterfuck of a damaged character is his ending. He hijacks Ultron's Quinjet, and when Black Widow tries to bring him back, he shuts her down and rides off into the sunset, looking all sad and in the fetal position. Where is he going? Don't know. Why is he leaving? Don't know. Bruce Banner makes a handful of references that he wanted to run away, but does the Hulk want that? This film referenced the idea that Hulk hates Banner, so why would he do what Banner wants? Does Bruce even want to do this? Earlier in the film, he concludes that there is nowhere safe for him to run to, and why does he leave Black Widow behind? Most of the runaway talk was made as flirty banter with her. There's a half-assed attempt to answer these questions in Thor Ragnarok, but it's a pathetic attempt. So, now I guess it's time to address that mistake of a film. Hulk's portrayal in Thor Ragnarok is just pure agony. In fact, this whole movie is agony. I know you normies like this movie because it does the ha-has and the yuck-yucks, but it's a dreadful adaptation of the source material and it murders the continuity and investment for all the characters involved in this train wreck. Where to even begin? Thor Ragnarok takes a lot of inspiration from the Planet Hulk comic, only switching it up to make Thor the main character. Planet Hulk is one of the Hulk's most popular and well-received storylines, with fans clamoring for a movie of it since the MCU's inception. However, instead of getting that Planet Hulk movie, we only get shallow beats and concepts from that comic, only to have them butchered and squandered far below their full potential. For starters, Hulk gets demoted to being a side character in favor of Thor. In the comic, Hulk is tricked into being sent to an alien planet by his fellow heroes because they decided he was too dangerous to remain on Earth. The journey left Hulk in a weakened state and allowed him to be taken as a slave, being forced to fight for entertainment, until he was able to regain his strength and liberate the planet with newly found allies, only to tragically lose everything in the end. In the film, Thor travels to an alien planet by mistake and is captured as a slave instead. He doesn't lose his strength or anything, he just gets tased and it's played for laughs. Thor then befriends Korg and Meek, characters who were once critical to the Hulk story. Though they are not the same Korg and Meek from the comics, they are just shallow copies that only exist for comic relief. Comic Korg was an early rival turned ally in the gladiator pits for Hulk. He was forced to fight his own people, killing his own brothers to survive, only later finding new brotherhood with Hulk and others. In the movie, he's Taika Waititi's self-insert, only existing as a vessel for his stand-up routine. In the comics, Meek is a small, frail creature who only survives by being protected by the Hulk time and time again until he's finally able to come into his own. Eventually, he grows into a leader and savior of his own people, also becoming Hulk's closest friend in the process, only to later organize the Hulk's worst betrayal. In the movies, he's a silly little blob with knife hands that gets stepped on. It's embarrassing and pathetic. It's like the writers are actively insulting me for enjoying the source material. When Hulk finally shows up in the film, it's to have a gladiator match against Thor. Instead of being a freedom fighter who inspires a planet-wide revolution, he's happy to be a slave as long as he gets to punch stuff. This portrayal of the Hulk would be seen as an enemy to his comic book self. Thankfully, at least Hulk gets to dominate most of this fight, except Thor goes Super Saiyan and gets the upper hand. Instead of inspiring worldwide change, Hulk has as much influence over the people as Ivan Drago.
Is actually beginning to win over what was once a hostile crowd. This is incredible.
It seems like Thor is about to win this fight, but the Grandmaster intervenes and allows Hulk to win. So this is nearly the second time the Hulk would have lost in a 1v1 against a fellow Avenger, though at least this time they had the decency to make it somewhat ambiguous. Hulk essentially takes the role of Silver Surfer in this story, being a surprise familiar opponent for Thor, only Silver Surfer freed all the slaves at the end. This version of Hulk just encourages the slavery to continue. Later on, Hulk and Thor get a chance to catch up. In past films, Hulk was voiced by previous Hulk actor Lou Ferrigno.
Puny god.
But this time around, he gets voiced by Mark Ruffalo himself. And wow, Mark does an absolutely miserable job.
No Banner, only Hulk. Oh, Trains. I know, sorry, I just get so angry all the time. Hulk always angry.
Embarrassing.
Hulk smash, little man! Little man, leave Hulk alone! Hulk is strongest there is!
On the plus side, the Hulk finally gets to show some real character development for once. On the downside, it's shallow, doesn't make sense, and is generally played for laughs. To explain how we got to this planet, he literally just says Quinjet, because apparently those ships are capable of interstellar travel. His soft explanation for why he left Earth in the first place is because Earth hates Hulk. That's generally how it is in the comics, yes, but we barely see any evidence of this in the movies. The Hulk occasionally fought other Avengers, but they never showed any signs of disdain or hatred for the Hulk afterwards. Again, whenever Hulk would go on his rampages, he was pretty much immediately forgiven and suffered zero consequences. Earth hates Hulk? Yeah, shut up, movie. Just because you say it doesn't mean it's true. These lines aren't really said with much weight anyway. They more so come off as Hulk making excuses because he doesn't feel like helping Thor. It's pretty much commonly understood that Hulk is immature and childlike, but man oh man, do they take that to the extreme in this movie. Traditionally, he's supposed to behave like a more primal, instinct-based figure, but here he literally acts like an oversized green baby. The once feared and revered hero from the first film is long gone. If the writers aren't going to take this character seriously, then why should the audience? They would rather show him trot around naked, throw tantrums, and get pushed around by Tessa Thompson than tell a compelling story. But at least it's funny, right? After they do their jokes, Hulk disappears again until the end of the film. Mark Ruffalo's back as Bruce Banner, and he seems to be aging at double the rate of the average man. When they finally decide to bring Hulk back, they do it by recycling a joke from the Ed Norton film, only 300% more goofy. It's not like the Hulk's return really matters though, since he spends the entire final battle having a sloppy CGI fight with a giant wolf. It's clear the writers don't want to use him here, but since he was already there, they need to find something for him to do. You could erase this fight from the film and nothing would really change. He also attacks Surtur at one point, but it's only played for laughs, and it further nails down the image of him being a dumb child. There's also something else that needs to be called out. While the CGI may be improved on a technical level, it feels so much worse and cartoon-like than it used to. Hulk's movements are spastic and unnatural. It doesn't help that he's generally always in a CG environment fighting CG enemies, with very little practical props or set pieces to interact with. When I watch the Hulk in the Avengers, they do an excellent job of making him seem like he's really there. In this film and in future films, he seems just as believable as Shrek. And on the topic of future films, it's time we move on to Hulk's final appearance in Infinity War. Thor and the Asgardians have been ravaged by Thanos and his forces. All seems lost, but then Loki calls back to the famous line, "We have a Hulk," and the hero appears. But wait, where was he while everyone was being slaughtered? Never mind that. It's time for some long overdue fan service where Hulk... Oh. Okay. In wrestling terms, Hulk was only there to do the job for Thanos. He was a previously established powerful character that gets easily dominated by this new character to make this new character seem even more powerful. Thanos doesn't even use the Infinity Gauntlet. His minions describe the fight as Thanos having his fun. This didn't happen in the comics. The writers did everything they could to bury the Hulk. Coming into this movie, one might expect a showdown between Hulk and Thanos to be a prime fan service moment, with these two giants shaking continents in their battle. But no, the Hulk is easily wiped out within the first 5 minutes of this film. This is part 1 of the ultimate finale, and the Hulk gets eliminated before the game even starts. He was once a fan-favorite Marvel hero who rivaled the popularity of Spider-Man and Wolverine, but now he's been reduced to an oversized jobber. Heimdall transports Hulk to Earth, and he is never seen again. I wish I were joking, but that's the last time we ever see the Hulk in the MCU. When Bruce Banner lands on Earth, the Hulk won't let him transform for some mysterious reason. And like any good hack writer, the Russos explain the reason for this in an off-screen interview. Joe Russo states that the Hulk was tired of playing hero for Bruce Banner, and there's so much bullshit in that statement that it's migraine-inducing. When has he ever shown distress for playing hero? In just the last film, it was established that the Hulk liked being in control. Why does not wanting to play hero prevent him from transforming? And since when could he control the transformation? Does the Hulk not understand the danger that Bruce is facing? He better not, because if he did, that would mean that the Hulk is a coward who sat idly by while half the universe got erased, making him the furthest thing from being a hero now. The Russos later elaborate that they just made a shallow excuse to sideline the Hulk so that they could give Bruce Banner more development. But why in the world would you do this? This statement leads me to believe that the Russos are morons who don't know what they're doing. The Hulk is the co-star to Bruce Banner's story. If you take Jekyll and Hyde, but remove Hyde from the story, then what's the point? Now you just have a story about a normal man. The entire intrigue of Bruce Banner's character is that he has access to this tremendous power, but is far outside his control. The appeal is making him find a way to navigate his struggles as much as humanly possible, until he's able to release that power with the smallest risk available, or by having him attempt to do so and failing because his lack of control overwhelms him. If you remove the uncontrollable power from the equation, then nothing is remarkable or interesting about Bruce Banner anymore. He's just one of a million other geniuses in the Marvel Universe. And what development were they trying to achieve by only using Bruce Banner? He doesn't do anything in this movie. He warns people about Thanos, but they generally already understand that he's dangerous, so who cares? He then spends the rest of the film being a clown, either being made fun of or just making fun of himself. He spends another large chunk of his screen time just arguing with the Hulk to come out. In the battle for Wakanda, he uses the Hulkbuster armor and it's just more pure embarrassment. For one, Mark Ruffalo's acting performance has tanked rapidly down the drain. He plays the role more like a drunken jester than a tragic doctor.
I'll do it myself! Wow, this is amazing, man! It's like being the Hulk without action!
Secondly, the CGI is dreadful. It looks as if they forgot to do these shots and had to rush them in the night before the premiere. And thirdly, they lied to us. We see the Hulk at the Battle for Wakanda in the trailers, but that is purely false advertising. It's not a small shot either, it's the money shot of the trailer, and it's even what they used for the thumbnail. It's pretty clear why the effects are so bad. It's because they decided last minute to remove Hulk from the movie. And why didn't they use him? Bruce Banner not only got zero development in that scene, but he spent the entire time acting like a fool. There is no good reason why they couldn't have just used the Hulk here. In fact, he could have used this battle to develop the Hulk's character, since he needs the development way more than Bruce does. This could be his chance to redeem himself from the opening battle. He could make peace with his fellow Avengers that he abandoned. He could evolve into the World Breaker. If there was ever a time to make that adaptation, this was it. Many people, including myself, speculated that they were holding off on the Hulk for this film, because they were subtly building hype for the World Breaker in the next one. But no. Not only did they not do that, they did something far worse.
Here, try some of that.
Have some eggs.
I'm so confused.
18 months in the gamma lab. I put the brains and the brawn together. And now look at me.
Bruce.
Damn!
Bruce.
Listen to your mom.
They killed him. Hulk dies off screen, and Bruce Banner takes his place. The Hulk as a character, with the few wants and desires he ever had, is now completely gone. He will never redeem himself against Thanos. He will never reunite with the Avengers. He will never become the World Breaker. It is sad when you realize that Age of Ultron is the last time we got to see the Hulk be a part of the Avengers. I mentioned before that it was unclear if Bruce was in control, or if the Hulk was an independent entity, but it's pretty clear now. The Hulk used to be an independent entity, but then he got eradicated by Bruce Banner. Having Bruce and the Hulk find peace with each other is the ultimate conclusion of those two characters, and they did it off screen. But also, a more proper conclusion to that would have the Hulk and Bruce seamlessly cooperate without having to fight for control, not by making one consume the other. Oh, what's that you say? Professor Hulk was in the comics? Well, you're right. To that I say, not all comics are good and worth adapting. Also, there were decades upon decades of traditional Hulk stories before Professor Hulk was ever a thing. And even after Professor Hulk was a thing, they undid it and went back to traditional Hulk, because that version is just better. They've done a lot of questionable stuff with Marvel characters over the years, but more often than not, at the end of the day, they always go back to the classic. But since they want to go with this Professor Hulk route regardless, I have to ask, what narrative satisfaction does this achieve? He has no arc, there was no build-up to this change, and nothing profound happens as a result. He helps build the time machine, but Bruce probably would have had an easier time doing that as a normal human. He converses with the Ancient One, but again, that's something that Bruce could have just done on his own. He wields the gauntlet, and I suppose that's something, but it is literally just a thing that happens. That probably sounds redundant, I'm sure, but that's because it is. Why does Prof. Hulk do the snap? Because he needs something to do. There was no build-up, no arc, no foreshadowing, not to mention this moment is completely eclipsed by Iron Man's snap later on. This moment, and Prof. Hulk in general, could have worked much better if Banner and Hulk were constantly clashing and fighting for control throughout the movie until they ultimately decide they need to come together and perform this task in the end. It could even serve as a tragedy, because the Hulk would give up his consciousness in order to save a world that he thinks hates him. But he's not smart enough, and Banner is too weak for either of them to do the snap separately, so there's no other way. But no. Instead of building up to that moment, Prof. Hulk spends most of the film lying around and being goofy. At one point, he watches his past self with embarrassment, and I find that quite ironic from a meta perspective. At this point, I have to believe that the Russos just don't like the Hulk as a character, and this is their way of saying it. All they did with this character was bury him, make him a coward, and kill him off. When his past self shows up, they cringe at him and make him a punchline. By the way, the Black Widow romance is back. Sort of. All that really comes of it is that the Hulk gets upset when she dies. He throws a bench kind of far. Great setup and payoff, guys. I'm so glad that we erased Betty Ross so we could have this moment. After Prof. Hulk performs the snap, his arm is withered and wounded. Normally for the Hulk, this would just be a minor inconvenience that would heal in seconds. But for some reason, Prof. Hulk is left in a sling for the rest of the film. Peg it down to Infinity Stone magic, I guess. Whatever headcanon explains it away. It's just a shame, because right after that, the big epic finale goes down and Hulk does absolutely nothing remarkable in it. If you aren't looking in the background, you probably won't even see him there. Hulk was once a member of the Big Four in the Avengers, alongside Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America, but I guess he just got demoted to lifting rocks. Sure, that's a reference to a big moment in the comics, but in that he was lifting a mountain, and it wasn't overshadowed by the biggest showdown in the entire series. It's particularly insulting to see every other hero put up a better fight against Thanos than the Hulk did, with or without the gauntlet. This character's journey has been a complete travesty. He stumbled out the gate, became a one-hit wonder, fell from grace, vanished, and got cucked out of his best storyline. He got turned into a joke, a jobber, a coward, and then he got killed off. I know there's a bit of drama with Universal that's mildly preventing Hulk from having his own solo films, but to that I say, what about Black Widow, or Bucky, or Loki, or any of the Guardians? They didn't need solo films to have properly fleshed out characters with clearly defined arcs, so where does that leave us now? Well, where else would we go than to set up his replacement, of course, and if you think I'm joking or being dramatic about that, then you haven't been paying attention. In any case, I hope I made my point clear enough. If you like this rant and want to see more like it, then ask that subscribe button out to dinner. She really likes you.